Wonderful.
Okay. Buenas tardes. Soy Stephanie Garrett, su bibliotecaria en línea de la CDU. Mi idioma principal es el inglés. Sin embargo, estoy trabajando para aprender más español en sentirme cómodo hablando con ustedes en español. Por lo tanto, cuando nos encontremos, tendré visuals en español, pero hablar principalmente en inglés. Gracias por unirse la hora de oficina de vida estudiantil. En esta noche vamos a estar hablando de métodos de lectura para ayudar en mejorar su eficiencia en la lectura en habilidades de estudio. Okay. So before we begin and while we wait to see if anybody else shows up, we are going to have a short poll that I'm going to launch on your screen for you to tell me some things about how you read your reading assignments. Okay. So I have placed that on the screen. And for Jeff's benefit, here, it's going to launch. There we go. For Jeff's benefit, the first question wants to know if you read the entire reading and then want to, or just try to go back and write down what you remember. And the second one is, do you just read through bits and pieces? Or actually, Maritza, I don't have it up. Can I get you to translate for me? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here, but I just submit mine.
Oh, you just submitted yours. So,
Yeah.
okay, well, hold on.
That's okay, Stephanie.
All
That's
right.
all right. You
Okay.
don't need to, don't cater to me. It's all right.
Okay.
Thank
All
you,
right.
though.
Somebody else is coming in the door. Hold on. Let me let them in.
Jeff, the options were that did you read it? Or did you read the title, subtitle, conclusion? You read and then underline, or the last one you read and take notes and look at the something vocabulary that you don't understand.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Maritza. I
Okay.
appreciate that. So I read and underline, and then I take notes on the sides if it was really, really important.
Okay,
So
that's
the third one.
okay. So, Maria and Nora, if you want to answer the poll, okay, good. There, the answers just came through. And I will warn you, I'm not in my home office this week. And so my internet is running really slow where I am. So I'm going to end this poll for the moment, and we'll talk about it again in a few moments. And let me download the results. And I'm going to move it over here, and I'm going to go on to our next slide. Okay, so everyone's come in the room. We do this every time, but just in case you need help, you can, we recommend that you put your screen in speaker mode, and then everybody was muted when they came in, and we'll have question and answers at the end. So this is our program for tonight. We're going to begin with a prayer and then discuss several different reading methods. for you to try and practice with. And then we're going to have a Q&A session at the end. We'll wrap up with some final remarks. And then as you leave, you will get a survey. If you would please answer that survey, it would be greatly appreciated. Okay. All right. And if you can't talk, that's fine. You can put questions and comments in the chat. We'll get to those at the end. So let's begin with our opening prayer. Okay. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Vien Espíritu Santo, Divino Creador, verdadera fuente de los y manantial de sabiduría. Derrama tu resplendor sobre mi denso intelecto. Disipa las tinieblas que me cubren las del pecado y de la ignorancia. Concédeme una mente penetrante para comprender, una memoria retentiva, método y facilidad para aprender, lucidez para comprender y gracia abundante para expresarme. Guía el comienzo de mi obra, dirige su progreso y llévala a buen término. Te lo pido por Jesucristo, verdadero Dios y verdadero hombre, que vive y reina contigo y con el Padre por los siglos de los siglos. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, so let's take a look at our poll results right quick, and we're going to see how everyone, can you see those on your screen? Everybody likes to read and take notes differently. And so it's important to understand that while we all like to read in different ways and take notes in different ways, there are methods that we can learn to help us do that better. So does anyone have anything they want to share in the chat about either difficulty they have reading or something unique that they like to do that they like to share with everyone before we talk about the first reading method, which is active reading? Y'all are very quiet out there tonight. Okay. Look over here. All right, looks like we're okay. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that. And then we're going to talk about the first reading method, which is active reading. And when we do active reading, it involves many different things. We're going to, it's a way of thinking, questioning, writing, summarizing, reflecting, and even talking out loud to ourselves as we read. It helps us stay focused while we're reading. And because we're active in the things that we're doing rather than just like passively skimming through it, we actually retain information better. Okay, so here are 10 tips to be a more active reader. Okay, when you begin reading your assignment, you want to link it to the current knowledge that you already have. So have you read something about this topic before, or have you lived an experience with this topic? Are you reading something that confirms or changes what you thought about this topic? And also, you want to, as you go along, you want to note any new information that can change or support your views. And that will help make what you're reading more relevant to your study. Okay. So as we go through these, look for themes or patterns and relationships to what you're reading. How do these thoughts and ideas connect with each other? Either in your textbook or your other assigned readings. And you want to note similarities that can help you understand the big picture when it comes to new topics. The second thing is you can use images to help you remember. If you have strong visuals to help you understand new topics, you'll find it helpful when taking notes from your course reading. Sometimes that doesn't have to be a big picture. I know that many of you studied concept mapping in your very first term at CDU. And so in concept maps are another way of visualizing that information. Okay. As you're reading, take time to summarize the text in your own words. So maybe just read a chapter or a paragraph and try to re-explain that to yourself out loud in your own words, or rewrite it down in your own words. And one way is to think about it, how would you explain it to a family member who didn't know anything about the topic in order to try to get their interest? Okay. And then 4, ask questions as you read. Don't accept everything that you read without questioning it. Think about who wrote this source? Or, where did they get their education? Um, what what expertise might they have in this? And that's especially good when you're reading articles online. You want to look at who wrote it and where they got their expertise from. Okay. The 5th thing is to ask questions even before you start reading. Okay. They can help guide your reading. So when we do writing for or researching for our essays, we generally start with what is our research question. And so we know we're looking for an answer to that question. Okay. Look up unfamiliar words and terms as you go along. Okay. If you don't understand it, or if it seems out of place in the context you're reading it in, be sure to look it up to make sure you understand it before you move on. Okay. And then make connections between your readings and your class notes. As you work through your assigned readings, refer back to your class notes. How did your professor frame their discussion about the topic? What were the key things your professor wanted you to understand? And how do your course readings support or contradict those perspectives in what you're reading? You can create your own examples of a new concept. Creating your own example to explain a new concept can help you remember the key parts of that new idea. And this is especially important if you need to write about it in an upcoming essay or exam. And finally, reflect on this, or no, this is the penultimate, the 9th note. Reflect on why this new information is important. You should make connections between your own life and the subject that you're studying, or you can connect it to the wider world and why should these ideas matter to people. And also you can look at ways for you to connect your course readings back to the world and outside the classroom. Okay. And it's important to note that these are a lot of new habits. Don't try to do them all at once. Start with one and then add another until they all become part of your study habits. And it looks like I missed putting number 10 in my notes. So hang on just a second and I'll tell you what, I'll give you some more details on number 10. Okay. or no, I guess I numbered wrong. So I guess I have all 10 in there. So we're going to move on. Okay. So that's the active learning method. And then even while you're doing active learning or active reading, what you also want to learn to do is to skim read your articles, okay? And this is especially important when you've got a lot of reading to do or you're reviewing articles and other sources for a research paper, not just with trying to get all the reading in for your assignment during the week. And so skimming lets you get the essence from your reading material without reading all of the words. It boils down to knowing what parts to read and what parts to pass by. And so we're going to go through some tips to recognize what's important to read in the act of skimming. Okay. So first of all, know what you want to know or know what you need to know. So before you start skimming, ask yourself what you want to get from the book or article that you're looking at. Think of 2 or 3 terms that describe what you want to know, and as you skim, keep an eye out for those 2 or 3 terms. Aimlessly skimming with no particular purpose can cause drowsiness and eventually sleep. Okay, so that's what happens when we're trying to force ourselves to read the whole thing and it's late at night and then we're nodding off. So skimming can help you get through everything without going to sleep before you mean to. Read vertically as well as horizontally. When skimming, move your eyes vertically, that's up and down, as much as you move your eyes left to right, okay, or horizontally. So you're up and down, left to right, as you run through the text on there. Kind of think of it as running down the stairs. You take one step at a time, but you still get there faster, okay? You also want to think like the author. Every article, book, and web page is written to make some kind of point. And if you can detect the author's strategies for making his point, you can separate the important from the unimportant material in the course of your reading. And you can focus on the original, meaningful material and skip over the material that is just supports the author's argument without advancing it. Detecting the author's strategies requires you to put yourself in his place. Besides noticing the material on the page, notice how he presents the material. See whether you can recognize how the author places background material, secondary arguments, and tangential information, and just plain frippery, okay? And then when you skim, there's actually a process that you go through that we're going to get to here in a minute, but pre-read before you start skimming. Examine an article before you read it. By pre-reading an article before you skim, you can pinpoint the parts of the article that require your undivided attention and the parts you can skip. So you're looking for an abstract or an introduction. You're looking at the different footnotes that are listed. You can look at the different, if there are graphics or schematics or anything noted there or captions, and look at subheads and subtitles and conclusions. Okay. So then you try to detect the main idea in the introductory paragraph. The introductory paragraph is usually one that you want to read thoroughly because it explains the main idea, argument, or goal of an article or chapter. And then you read these paragraphs closely and they'll tell you what the author's aim is, which can help you decide early on whether the article or chapter is worth reading in detail. And then read the first sentence in each paragraph. This introductory sentence of each paragraph usually describes what follows in the paragraphs. And when you skim, read the first sentence and then decide whether if you need to read more in the paragraph later. If it doesn't, you can just move on to the next one. And don't necessarily read complete sentences. When skimming, you can just read the start of the sentence, and if it holds no promise, then skip to the next sentence. Okay? And you can go through and pick out the words that you need at a glance. Okay, so that's skim reading. And now the next one, we've talked about reading strategies, and then you can use active reading and you can use skim reading, and you can combine them with what's called SQR, which is a method of reading and taking notes as you go along to help you better retain information. Okay, and it's an active learning approach. It has a lot of different strategies for retaining information and creating your study materials. And that's why note taking is such a large part of this one as well. And we're going to watch a video right quick on that, and then talk about the pros and cons of this. So hang on.
Cuando escribes, tu tono influye en cómo responden los lectores. Con Grammarly, solo debes seleccionar el texto y escribir como quieres.
¿Estás buscando una técnica de estudio que te permita estudiar de una forma más efectiva y, por qué no, de una forma más amena, más divertida? Genial, porque en este vídeo te voy a explicar cómo funciona la técnica de estudio SQ4R, una técnica de estudio más dinámica que la forma de estudiar tradicional y que además es muy efectiva a la hora de estudiar temarios muy amplios e incluso oposiciones. Y es que la forma de estudio tradicional basada en la memorización por repetición no funciona. Es una técnica de estudio que requiere un montón de esfuerzo, que es aburrida, que incluso muchas veces hace que aborrezcamos la materia que estamos estudiando, y todo esto repercute en el resultado que vamos a obtener. Así que si quieres saber mucho más sobre la técnica de estudio SQ4R, acompáñame porque va a ser un antes y un después en tu forma de estudio. Bien, vamos a ver cómo funciona esta técnica de estudio SQ4R. El estudio lo vamos a organizar, a estructurar en diferentes fases. De hecho, el nombre proviene del acrónimo del nombre de cada una de estas fases. La primera fase va a ser la de inspeccionar. El objetivo de esta fase va a ser el tener una visión global de aquello que tenemos que estudiar. ¿Cómo lo vamos a conseguir? Mediante una lectura rápida. No te detengas demasiado, no pierdas demasiado tiempo. Fíjate en los títulos, fíjate en tablas, en esquemas, en imágenes, en todo lo que veas que puede ser relevante. Y todo esto ves anotándolo en un papel para tener una visión, como hemos dicho, global, una imagen general de aquello que tienes que estudiar. La siguiente fase va a ser la de preguntar. Y es que en base a la información que hemos obtenido previamente con esa lectura rápida, vamos a intentar ponernos en la piel del profesor e intentar intuir cuáles podrían ser las preguntas de examen que podría ponernos. Por ejemplo, si estamos estudiando la mitocondria, algunas de las preguntas que podrían ponernos podrían ser, pues, ¿cuál es la estructura de una mitocondria? ¿Cuál es la función principal de la mitocondria en la célula? ¿O cuáles son los procesos que se llevan a cabo dentro de una mitocondria? La tercera etapa va a consistir en leer. Vamos a hacer una lectura pausada, vamos a hacer una lectura activa, donde lo importante es entender aquello que estamos estudiando. Es muy importante para esta técnica de estudio entender lo que estamos estudiando. Ten en cuenta que esta técnica se basa en la memorización, en el estudio por comprensión. De manera que si tienes que consultar otras fuentes para entender un poco mejor aquello que estás viendo, hazlo, consulta otros apuntes, otros libros, consulta en internet, pero déjalo todo muy claro. Cuando estés leyendo, haz anotaciones, intenta responder todas aquellas preguntas que previamente has anotado como posibles preguntas de examen. E incluso si cuando hagas esta lectura más activa encuentras alguna parte del temario que no habías incluido dentro de las preguntas y que crees que puede ser el objeto de alguna pregunta de examen, añádelas a tu listado. Ha llegado el momento de poner a prueba lo que hemos hecho hasta ahora. En la cuarta fase vamos a recitar. Vamos a intentar responder a las preguntas que hemos anotado como posibles preguntas de examen, pero sin la ayuda de los apuntes. Así que plántate en medio de la habitación y empieza a explicar de forma oral las respuestas a cada una de estas preguntas. Imagina que se lo estás explicando a un amigo. Y esto es un proceso importante, ya que cuando somos capaces de explicar algo, es porque lo hemos llegado a interiorizar y a entender muy bien. Bien, llegamos a la quinta fase y en esta fase vamos a escribir. Vamos a volver a responder todas las posibles preguntas de examen, pero en este caso por escrito. Previamente lo hemos hecho de forma oral y ahora lo vamos a hacer por escrito. Son dos procesos diferentes que van a reforzar el aprendizaje. Ten en cuenta una cosa, no nos expresamos de igual forma cuando estamos explicándole algo a un amigo que cuando lo escribimos en un papel. Ten en cuenta que lo más seguro es que en el examen tengas que plasmar tus respuestas por escrito. Cuando estés redactando las respuestas, intenta remarcar los conceptos y las ideas más importantes. Puedes remarcarlos subrayando o mediante colores. También sería conveniente que fueras creando tus pequeños esquemas, dibujos e incluso mapas mentales. Ten en cuenta que estás creando un resumen de lo que tienes que estudiar en base a posibles preguntas de examen. Y llegamos a la última fase, la fase de revisión. Ahora toca revisar las respuestas que hemos redactado a las posibles preguntas de examen. Comprueba que has incluido toda la información importante. Añade posible información que se te haya quedado en el tintero y complementa aquellas partes que creas que llevas un poco peor. Ya hemos visto cómo aplicar la técnica de estudio SQ4R. Y ahora es posible que te preguntes, ¿por qué debería aplicar esta técnica de estudio? ¿Por qué debería incorporarla a mi forma de estudio? ¿Cuáles son sus beneficios? La técnica de estudio SQ4R es una técnica que se basa en la memorización comprensiva. Y la memorización comprensiva está más que demostrado que es una de las formas de aprendizaje más eficaces que existen. De hecho, otras famosas técnicas de estudio como la Feynman utilizan o se basan en esta forma de aprender. Esta técnica de estudio orienta todo el esfuerzo a la comprensión y a la asimilación de la información. Puede parecer que hay que aplicar un montón de fases y que quizá el esfuerzo pueda ser superior a las formas de estudio tradicionales, pero no es así. No es así porque en el momento en el que comprendemos lo que estamos estudiando, lo asimilamos y lo relacionamos con todos los conocimientos que tenemos previos. En ese momento es cuando se establecen las conexiones sinápticas en nuestras neuronas y de esta forma ese aprendizaje queda consolidado y es mucho más duradero en el tiempo. Espero que te haya resultado muy interesante este vídeo, que apliques esta técnica de estudio y que tus resultados mejoren con respecto a los previos. Si te ha gustado este vídeo, apóyanos, dale al like, comenta el vídeo y si...
Okay, we're going to stop there. So, okay. So SQR takes a while, or SQ4R takes a while to learn. And there, but the more you use it, the easier it becomes. And it does have some pros and cons as you're learning to use it, okay? So it's an active learning strategy that you can adapt for your preferences, your study preferences, okay? It's going to reduce the amount of information that you need to relearn for exams because the writing and the rewriting help you retain information better. So, excuse me. So with everything that you learn throughout the term, you retain that information better. Okay, it prompts you to create study material while you're reading, and so you don't have to go back and recreate that to study for your exams. And it helps you identify your own errors and areas of confusion. The cons with using SQR is it does take time to get familiar with the method and what needs to be done at each stage. In the beginning, especially, it requires more mental effort to read, record, and test the knowledge during a study session. And when you first start, it can feel like it takes longer to finish your readings, which most of us are looking for ways to get through our readings faster, but it just takes practice. And then if you just try to kind of fudge your way through the method without engaging with the text too much, without marking too much or too little, and highlighting can make it difficult. So those are the methods that I wanted to share with you this evening. So now it is your opportunity to ask questions and share your comments. So you can either use your raise your hand function or just welcome to turn on your microphone. It's been very quiet out there.
Okay, I make a comment for the AA students. Everything, o todo lo que hicimos en esta sesión está en asesoría académica. La explicación que es el SQ434 y todas las diapositivas. Y luego en la biblioteca Stephanie lo colocará, así que después se pueden leer. Jeff, we have a group in Spanish that I call academic advisor. So I took note of everything and I put everything in there for my students. So for the ACST, we have a program, AA-CST. So that is the group for them. It's like the student life group, Pronto group, but we have one in Spanish. Just to let you know.
Yes. And all of these things, I'm in the middle. I was hoping to finish a guide today. I'm working because I do English and Spanish simultaneously when I do that. But I'm going to put together a guide so that you'll have that with these strategies and some other tools to go with it, like a worksheet for doing the notes when you use SQ4R, things like that. So there's a lot, but when you're doing your college level work, there is so much reading and so much you have to retain. And so when we are good at reading, taking notes and organizing our notes, creating mental maps from the beginning, it saves us time when we're studying for our exams or we're having to write a paper and things. All of that will come together because you use this both in what you're reading for your class, for your discussions, for the exams, as well as you use these same methods when you're reading to write a paper. So they come in very handy. Okay, Maria or Sarah, do you have any questions? You're so quiet. Or Nora, if you have anything you want to put in the chat. Oh, y'all are so quiet this evening.
Nora is typing.
See, I guess there's a lot of reading, and there's a good way to start because I need to retain all the information, and then I need to make how do you say summary
A summary.
Yeah, but there's a lot of tips here, like to
There,
in
there,
make questions about the reading, and
Mhm.
there's a good way to start, and the looking for a new words or a new words
when
to,
you don't understand the words, yes. When you
yeah, I
getting
make
your
a kind of glossary to make a description of the words that I don't know. So that's the
yeah,
way.
that's really good technique. Maritza and I are both fan of index cards for that. I knew she was gonna show her index cards. And the just remember on those techniques, they showed a lot of steps, but it's like making new habits. You do one at a time and then add another one. You can't eat an elephant and all in one bite. You have to do several. So start with one at a time until it becomes normal. And so Sarah's question is, I think she needs help is the transition from one paragraph to another. Oh, that's a writing skill. Okay. And you, Maritza, I'm going to explain this and then maybe you can translate. One of the key things with making that smooth transition is the last sentence you write is kind of summarizing everything that you had in the paragraph. So, and then you want to connect it to what you're going to talk about in the next paragraph. And so, see if I can think of an example off the top of my head. So I might say,
Let me explain that part.
okay,
Sara,
you explain that part and I'm going to look for an example.
Sara, para que tú puedas seguirle la transición de un párrafo a otro, tú lees el párrafo, lo escribes si lo estás escribiendo, y usualmente la última frase es la conexión con la frase siguiente. Stephanie nos va a dar un ejemplo. Más o menos eso es lo que estás preguntando, ¿verdad?
No. Yeah, hold on. I'm trying to find this one paper.
Así vas siguiendo como el hilo de lo que estás escribiendo. La última frase es la conexión con la conexión con el párrafo siguiente. Así queda conectado. Y la puntuación, claro.
Oh, where is that?
While you find the example, let me share something.
Okay.
I was in a conference, in a women's conference, writers conference, and we had different topics and different reasons of writing, publishing, illustrations, social media, and so on and so on. So I took notes as usual. It's a huge conference. It was a whole week. But then I realized that to go over all that notes, I will be crazy. So I took the whole index. It was an example here. You have to organize yourself. And I took an index card of different colors. It's the same when you are doing a reading. You're reading about, let's say, the Old Testament. And you have to go through the Genesis, Exodus, the Pentateuch, let's say, for that. So, well, Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and what is the other one? Yes, that one. So that way you remember, your mind make the connection. Oh, Genesis. In the Genesis, I work on this, and this is what happened. Except, the transition from here to there. So the colors helps your brain connect with the topics. Instead of putting everything in one notebook with all colors, or they said, I love this. color pencil. It's incredible when you're taking a test, when you're taking a quiz. I took my COM exam, that is 4 hours quiz. And I did each session in different colors. When I was doing my exam, my brain was remembering, oh, this is that. The colors makes the
The
connection.
colors.
At least my brain works that way. So it's a tip. Stephanie,
Okay.
do you have an example?
Yes. So I found an example. So here is a paragraph or two paragraphs that do not have a good transition. Okay. So the writer's been talking about the first council of Constantinople, and he says at the last paragraph of the sentence, or the last sentence of the paragraph says, at the end of the 4th century, at the first council of Constantinople in 381, the church redefined the true humanity and divinity of Christ between himself and humanity. That's the end of the sentence. And then his next sentence says, according to Coretzi, who's an author, in the Middle Ages, the center of attention shifted from the mystery of Christ to its personal appropriation in the spiritual life, and the monk, in technical terms, from the objective to the subjective redemption.
No
Do you,
connection.
do you see any connection? Can you imagine any connection between the two of those?
Oh,
So,
Sara, por ejemplo, si tú estás hablando del Antiguo Testamento o si estás hablando de un concilio, por ejemplo, estás hablando del concilio de Constantinopla 381 y cuando finalizas, ok, pones el punto, pero luego hablas de otro tópico que no está nada relacionado con el concilio. Ahí es cuando no hay transición entre un párrafo y otro.
okay.
Okay.
So this writer was writing about he's doing a paper in Christology, and he's writing about how things developed from one council to the next. So he would have done better to say at the first council of Constantinople, the church fathers dealt with the they dealt with the divinity of Christ as well as his human nature, which led to these heresies in the Middle Ages. And then he can then start talking about the Middle Ages, but you want to connect the two. And that's off the top of my head, that's not the best example, but you want to, whatever you're ending with in summation, or you can even do it by using key terms at the end of one paragraph, that you use the same key terms at the beginning of the next paragraph. So it could have said the first council of Constantinople in 381 dealt with the divine nature and human nature of Christ. Okay. And then you could go on to the next paragraph and say, this misunderstandings about the divine nature and the human nature of Christ continued in the Middle Ages. See, you're using those words. So that's your transition, can be by connecting those concepts. But you don't want that hard break that, boom, I'm done talking about the first council of Constantinople, and now I'm going to talk about the Middle Ages. And then I'm having an out-of-body experience here because my upgrades to my Zoom, when I do with my hand, it's showing I'm raising my hand on the screen. I'm sorry, I'm blinking away. Talking with my hands is not going to work with this new version. Does that make sense, Sarah? Did that help Sarah understand better?
Yes.
Okay, you feel good, Sarah? I don't know where my chat went.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. But that's a writing skill that takes practice, and that's I haven't done proofreading of any of the papers in Spanish, and I don't know if you're able to take that on, Maritza, but I can still translate it back and forth and tell you
Oh,
if you need help. Yeah.
I'm good on editing.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you need help, Sarah, if you bring your paper to the library, we'll figure it out. So, because that's one of the things I do, Jeff, too, is I help with paper.
The only thing that
planning,
we need to do
writing.
it with time. We cannot submit
Yeah.
one paper one day before that you
Yeah.
have to submit to the
No,
teacher.
you have to
Because we
do
need
it in week
Week-
6 and 7, not in week 8.
Exactly, week 6 and 7. Yes.
Not in week 8.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But that's a great question, Sarah. And it's hard for everybody when they first start writing because we have all this
One-
information we just want to get out.
Something that I learned from Stephanie when I was a student is the storyboard. And I think next time we need to go. We need
No,
the
we are.
storyboard.
Our next session in week 4, we're going to use our notes, and we're going and things we learned from our reading strategies to create storyboards to help us do our write our summaries.
Mhm.
Okay.
So that way
Because-
you can do the transitions,
Yes.
jumping from one thing to something that doesn't make any sense. Yes.
Right. And so part of that's learning, is it in the right order? Storyboard helps you put it in the right flow so that the concepts connect. Yes, Nora.
Miss Marisa, Miss Stephanie, it's so hard for me to read and then the first time I cannot understand anything, so I need to read again. But I'm gonna practice the first 10 points, and then about the SQ4R. I'm gonna practice because I'm really is so hard for me to put in the sheet of paper something that it's for me in my brain is repeat the same words, so
Right.
I need to explain in 200 words something that I don't know if is good for me to repeat it and repeat it.
Okay. Do you read it out loud to yourself?
No, but I'm gonna try now. I'm gonna practice now.
Yes, reading out loud things that are difficult and running your finger or using a ruler so you stay, because sometimes when things are difficult, and I had this when I had to study philosophy, okay, because sometimes philosophy was what like killed me. And so I would have to read very slowly, line by line. I would have to read it out loud, or I would have to find, sometimes you can find somebody reading it out loud. That's why I like so many of our books in Digital Hispanica. They will read it out loud to you, or you can get screen reader software that if it's online, it will read the material to you. But just reading it out loud to yourself as you go along will make it easier, because your brain's not going, I want to get through this and get to the end. And then you remember, you will remember more.
Yes, thank you very much.
And as you go through finishing your degree, things start to, ideas and subjects will repeat, and you'll have those, aha, I remember, I read this before. It gets easier.
Yes, thank you. Because I'm used to read in the past, but now it's so different for me. But I'm gonna practice, so I'm gonna exercise my brain again. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, it's like getting all new wiring up there sometimes. Maria Rendon, you've been very quiet today. Do you have any questions or thoughts? I'm not sure if she's still here with us. What about you, Jeff?
No, this has been great. And as I mentioned when I first came on, Stephanie, philosophy for theology is my first course. And yeah, that philosophy's hitting me pretty hard. So I'm definitely learning to take my time reading. And that's a challenge for me, as I think Nora kind of just described too. You got to take your time and reread it and reread it
Well,
again
and
if
if
need be.
there's anything that you need, if you want, you always can email me or message me on Pronto, and I can help you find it in verbal form.
Sure.
That will help. There's a lot of stuff out on the public domain. If you have to, if you're, I'm not sure what all you're reading for that class, but you have to read it. The older you are, you have to give yourself grace too. Studying it as an older adult, our brains are wired a certain way. And when it's rewiring it. My analogy for it is I'm an old historic house with copper wiring that's being ripped out of my brain so it can be rewired up to code. It can be physically painful. And when I was going to philosophy classes and I worked in the college library, and I would come in and they would take one look at me and they'd say, "You just came from philosophy class." If I did, they could see it on my face. And so it's a one subject that does take more work, and then you're with a young kid in your class who's just spouting off all this stuff, and it's because their gray matter's sucking it up and ours is going, "No, we know what we know already."
Very true. Very true.
I
But
have a tip. I have a tip for those difficult lectures.
Mhm.
Read it in front of the Blessed Sacrament.
Yes. And
One of my worst classes, I read and I couldn't understand anything at all. And I said, "Oh my goodness, what is wrong with me?" I tried different positions. I was trying different places. Nothing. One day I said, "Okay, I give up. I'm going to the Blessed Sacrament. I'm going to fail that class." And I sit down in front of the sacrament and I start reading. And incredible. I said, "Wow, I understood." I started to understand the concept of philosophy and theology. It was a really difficult class, the theology of the church, and all those thoughts and thinkings and memorize people, days, everything. And it was not my perfect class, but I have a decent grade. But yes, this is my tip, and I really, it's working.
it does work. Where I did my undergraduate degree, there was a perpetual adoration chapel, and you always saw, and there were religious sisters and secular students both there. But if you saw somebody studying in there, it was because it was their most difficult class. And in the student life course in the chapel, you need the blessed, there's a perpetual adoration link in there. So you can virtually be before the Blessed Sacrament if you can't get there any other way. All right. Well, I'm going to share one couple more things on my screen as we wrap up. Let me see here.
Okay,
And
I hope you are doing fine, Maria. And I asked one of our classmates as for prayers, Samuel Fuentes, so please keep
okay,
in our prayers.
maybe we'll have a closing prayer for them.
Yes, please.
Right as we end.
Samuel and
Okay.
his family, please.
Okay. So on now, remember, next week we don't have anything going on, and you shouldn't have any assignments to turn in because we're off for Easter break. All the students are off next Monday through the following Monday. But then when we return on April 3rd, I'm going to do a session on how to find secondary sources and how to use those and why they're important in your research and writing. And then our next AA-CST program is how to write your summaries. That is on April 8th. Excuse me. As you leave, please complete the survey that pops up on your screen. I'm going to stop the recording, and then Maritza, if you want to start the prayer.
Yes.